Men written by women will always be elite. Period. End of discussion. Greetings, royalty. My name is Olivia, and welcome back to my realm. Excuse the very tight angle again because the hobby room is still not completely hobbified. So until that is ready to show to the world, we're going to stay on this special edition shelf with this very, very tight angle. So I am very excited to finally do this video, which is the top 5 books I read in 2025 or my favorite reads of 2025. Not surprisingly, it's comprised of romance, manga, sci-fi, and fantasy, which are the top genres for me. And even though I have this tiny stack of 4 books, we're going to start with the manga I actually don't have a copy of because I got an advanced reader copy. And that would be Spacewalking with You by Inuhiko Doronoda, I believe, but don't quote me on that. So what is this manga about? It's about 2 high school boys that seem to be either autistic or some type of neurodivergent. And it's a really compassionate portrayal of neurodivergency, which is a form of disability, in the way that adults especially can limit the growth of a child and make them feel like they're useless and don't have a future, sometimes on purpose, but oftentimes not having knowledge on how to handle certain things. The main characters are Kobayashi, who is a stereotypical Japanese Yankee, which is just a term they use for delinquent, who seems destined to drop out and be a failure in his life. Even some of his closest friends think he won't amount to much of anything, and there is a slight dynamic that his mother might be slightly negligent with him. He can't seem to hold down a job, which, spoiler alert, if you need to hold down a job to help your mother in high school, I think you're pretty responsible, but that's just me. And can't seem to focus on class or do anything right. And it really, really frustrates him and makes him fall even deeper into the stereotype of a delinquent who doesn't care about anything and basically listens to music and dreams away the day. And then one day, a transfer student, a manga classic, comes to his school and changes his life and his perspective on everything. His name is Uno, and it is pretty clear to the reader that he is autistic. He carries around a little notepad, which a bunch of notes that most people won't need to have. Things like knowing to brush your teeth, not talking about space unless the person seems interested because he has a hyper fixation on the stars and the galaxies, and basically ways to know how to socially interact. While I won't say much more because it would give a spoiler, that really sets the groundwork for, like I said, a very compassionate and tear-jerking manga. I actually cried reading this, and I'm very thankful to Natasha for giving me this art copy. I don't know if I'll ever get Volume 2's arc because it hasn't been listed on NetGalley where I got Volume 1, but if I ever do, I'm pretty sure it will probably be my favorite read of 2026 as well. While this manga was translated, I believe, in 2023 and 2024, for some reason, Natasha saw it fit to do another art push in 2025, and I am so thankful to see Kobayashi's and Uno's story, and I really hope someday I can continue spacewalking with them. Continuing on the theme of typically bullied or kind of pushed to the outskirts of society type of protagonist, I now want to talk about Volatile Memory, Book 1 in the Volatile Memory duet by Seth Haddon. This book was, or actually a novella, it's very, very short, actually shocked me with how much I actually loved it. I loved it so much, I actually went out and purchased a full price hardback edition from the Legendarium, which was kind of fitting because they are kind of like a safe space for trans individuals in my state as well. I got an art copy of Volatile Memory, like I did with Spacewalking with You, but like I said, loved it so much I went out and got a copy. I was kind of on my pre-book buying ban when it came time to buy Spacewalking with You, and now I'm kind of mad that I never bought Volume 2 because I was so sure it was going to be on Kodansha's NetGalley account. But enough about that, let's talk about this novella. When I reviewed it, I described it as a transhumanist, sapphic sci-fi fueled by feminine rage. And what I meant by that is that it is a trans story. Willa, who is kind of like an intergalactic hunter or scrapper in this far-flung future that feels very cyberpunk, even though it's set in space, which is chef's kiss, one of my favorite subgenres of cyberpunk when it's not set on Earth. She is basically hounded by the intergalactic forces because she changed her gender after birth. And she stumbles across this snowy, frozen planet where she finds Hawk, a mask that seems to have the consciousness of a dead woman inside of it. Yeah, it's very, very trippy, very Ghost in the Shell almost. It really had a lot of anime tropes actually that I really enjoy from various cyberpunk animes and kind of mixed in with the high stakes adventure and sapphic theme. And if you don't know what sapphic is like women who love women type of large umbrella. Because I didn't know what that word meant about 3.5 years ago. And so I know some people watching this video don't know what that means either. So yeah, it was different. I know I say this like every video, but I really can't say much of anything else because you see how short this novella is. It would be spoilers. But I also really like the transhumanist angle of the story. And a lot of times transhumanism kind of intersects with disability, going off the first book again. The thought of like rebuilding your skin after a fire, right? Of changing out an arm or leg that has been, for whatever reason severed and replacing it with a machine, something metallic, something cybernetic, right? I really love the transhumanism showed in this little novella as well. And I really just love to fight the power, F the government, for various reasons as well featured in this story. So it had everything I really like in sci-fi, the kind of Andor, more gritty sci-fi aspect, along with just a kind of like LGBT flair as well that I typically do enjoy. And yeah, I did not know it was getting a sequel. When I got the copy, it didn't make any indication in the art copy that it was part of a duology. And sorry if you can hear my cat scratching. For some reason, he's scratching the bottom of my bookshelf. I really need to get my books in here. I am just so excited that it doesn't end where it ends, because it ended in a way that you could read it as a standalone, but I am excited to see Willa and Hawk get their revenge. So with that said, I would highly recommend this little novella. It is a short read, but it's action-packed, and I think I finished the audiobook/book because I was listening and reading the ebook in like one sitting. I devoured this story. Now, this is kind of just snapping along because I have talked about all of these books more or less in various reading wrap-ups and TBR videos, half of which I don't have on this channel, but a decent amount I do. So if it feels like I'm not giving a lot of information about the books, it's because I just want you to go read them. I love them for obvious reasons. Now, the third book I would love for you to read in 2026 or whenever you are seeing this video is the Orc Prince Trilogy, the Omnibus edition, though you can read any variation of the 3 books inside this omnibus that you want, by Lionel Hart. Now, I actually meant to read his follow-up, like his sequel series set in the same world, on my December reading TBR video, but I ended up not finishing it, and I really do need to finish it because I got it in the mail, and I think I literally read like 200 pages of it, maybe a little less, and then object permanence, I put it down and forgot it existed. So I am locking in February to read that book because I absolutely adored this world. The audiobooks are on YouTube, and since I just talked in depth about this story in that December reading wrap up, I'll just give you a little glossary take of it. So there are 3 books inside of this omnibus, and excuse me while I go and find their names really quickly. Oh, and this is signed. I actually met the author at, what was it? It was in Anaheim, California, not Romance Out West. It was Steamy Lit Con. I believe that was the name, and I am so happy that I met them, and I ended up reading this story. I, for obvious reasons, really enjoyed it. Okay, so there is Claimed by the Orc Prince, and then I will go quickly because it's a little hard to hold it at this angle. Blood of the Orc Prince, and then Ascension of the Orc King. I am actually talking more about Ascension of the Orc King as the third book I'm recommending. It's kind of complicated how I read this story. So I have the Omnibus edition, but I actually listened to 3 separate audiobooks because they weren't in Omnibus collection. And typically when I listen to audiobooks in separate formats, I don't count it as an omnibus. I count each book individually. If I just read an omnibus, I typically just count the omnibus as read, if that makes sense. So like when I finished the Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, even though it's like over 1,000 pages, I'll count it as one book read, even though it's multiple books. I know I'm ranting a little bit much and yapping a little too much about my reading like preferences. But that said, Ascension of the Orc King was really what made me put this book on the list for my favorite reads and top books of 2025. Just something about this book. It has a hint of a megaverse, which is my favorite subgenre of all time. I will literally link up in the card and down in the description my whole megaverse reading challenge announcement. That's how much I love a megaverse. And while this is not advertised as that, it has so many of the elements along with the bonus material having the elements that I had to count that. I also just love when orcs and elves fall in love. You have Tegan, this kind of spoiled bratty prince, and Zorva, this kind of stoic, let me not slip up and say something I shouldn't, but a non-traditional orc who feels outcast in his society, has a found family with his arranged marriage to Tegan, that becomes a real family. Are you sensing some themes in the stories and romances that I like? Because other than the first book, all of these also have a romantic element. And I love the story of outcasts with romance or without romance as well. And I just love the world. I just felt like this was just a nice, high fantasy. I got lost in the story. And I was very satisfied with the ending, especially the second book kind of pissed me off a little bit. So I was worried that Lionel Hart would have sicked the ending, but he ate this up, and I love this series, and I can't recommend it enough, and I can't wait to talk about the follow-up series, A Vow to Heal and the Vows of Unity, sequel series in 2026. For the fourth book on this list, and yes, it is zooming by, because like I said, I'm going to not go too in-depth with each book because I've talked about them at length in other videos. I really kind of just have to spotlight the series as well. I have books 1, 2 that I'll be talking about, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and also like a spin-off called Rhino. This amazing series by Nicholas Sansbury Smith, who's kind of one of the kings, one of the top authors of the post-apocalyptic genre, which is Helldivers. And specifically, I'll be talking about Helldivers 2, Ghosts, which is actually one of the shorter Helldivers in the series. I read up to book 5 because I also got this really nice Chirp audiobook deal when I was getting back into reading in 2025 after years of struggling through some traumatic incidents that happened in my life and losing the ability to read. I really focused on audiobooks to retrain my mind and doing a page a day or a minute a day, and it really helped me get back into my reading habit. And Helldivers was one of those series that did that for me. So part of the reason it's on this list is that it's one of the first books I read in 2025, and subsequently one of the first books I read in many years, and it stuck with me. And I'm really thankful for the author for making such an engrossing series that took me to this dark dystopian post-apocalyptic world and kept me in a vice grip. And the only reason I stopped reading it is because I wanted to get into the other 100 or so books I read that year. So you might be going, what is Helldivers even about? This kind of looks like a Call of Duty cover or the Helldivers video game series, though I don't think it's based off of at all, because that one's intergalactic and this is set on a ruined Earth. But anyway, yapping again, let's talk about Helldivers. So on the back cover, you see, we dive so humanity survives. And in the first book, you are kind of put in the POV of Xavier X Rodriguez, who is the most famed and successful hell diver on this kind of airship that circles this ruined world. You have a sense that some type of nuclear disaster has struck the earth because heavy clouds cover the surface and these mutated creatures roam the earth. Now, the science in this science fiction story is very fiction. I don't think anyone, even someone like me who does not have a background or a degree in science, would say that this holds up to logical scrutiny, that all these people would be able to sustain like farm life and crops and stuff in these helium-based machines that float in the sky. But at the end of the day, we turn the science off because we read science fiction because we want that humanity angle. And gosh, does this series give you raw humanity. Now, Helldivers 2 Ghosts actually set 10 years. Yes, there's a 10-year time skip between book 1 and book 2. And I do know there is like, what is it? I think it's Helldivers Lost Years, which kind of follows what was happening in between that time. But the reason why I gave number 2 a 5-star, and also I put it in this list is because it was one of the most engrossing sequels I had ever read in a very, very long time. I cared about all the characters, even the villains, even the minor characters. I was afraid and torn up when deaths happened, even if they weren't main characters. They felt like real living, breathing people to me. I was rooting for the heroes. I was, praying on the villain's downfall. And it really did feel like reading a movie, if that makes sense. It was just action-packed, rather very fast-paced, and I love a fast-paced book. And it just hit the spot. Now, you don't hear me talking a lot about the plot because, again, that 10-year time skip. If you don't read Helldivers book 1, a lot of this is just straight up spoilers, right? And I keep saying this on this list, and that's because I tend to read a lot of series, and with series, unless there's interconnected standalones or true standalones, you really got to read book 1. But this is me saying I want you to read all of Helldivers. I'm challenging myself to finish a bunch of series I started in 2025 this year, and Helldivers is at the top of the list. Now, I was getting frustrated as the series went on, but the fact that I was still reading shows that I was still invested because I am a hard DNFer. If I don't like a book, I do not finish, I put it down, and I don't think about it again. So the fact that I'm still so engrossed, to the degree that I got patches from his website, NSS's website, I got his author website, I got copies of the book, like I was locked in, and was even reading another series of his called Tracker. So I open up this author's newsletter every time I get it. Even though I'm on a book buying ban, as soon as it's over, I'm going to get more of his work. And yeah, I was just really, really happy to get into the story. And I hope if you're looking for some light within the darkness, I feel like this series is a perfect balance and blend of heroism, villainism, and just everyday people trying to survive. In my 5th and final recommendation, and I said romantic angle. In the other book, there is a subplot romance. So again, that's one thing I like. But this is my straight up romance I'm going to recommend. The book boyfriend in here is a top 5 book boyfriend. This is one of my top 10 romances of all time. And if you know anything about me, even if you've never been on this channel, and look, if you're a distinguished guest and you wish to become a citizen or even royalty among our realm, please like and subscribe so we can talk about books. I love books, and I would love to hear some recommendations and some of your top reads of 2025. But as a big time, long time romance reader, been in them trenches 10 plus years, I cannot sing enough praises for this book. Only for the Weak, the Forever Falling series, book 1 by the lovely Natasha Bishop, which I was so excited to get signed at the inaugural Black Romance Book Con. As much as it hurt my pockets last year to go to so many book conventions, I met so many amazing authors that I was already a fan of and got signed editions. In Natasha was that example, or found and discovered authors there that I fell in love with. So I do love me some book cons. But with that said, what is Only for the Weak? Only for the Week was actually originally self-published, and I had seen that cover float around, but I am so happy for once that I waited for the traditionally published version of a book, because the gap between book 1 and book 2, which is coming out this year, and I also put in a video where I talked about my most anticipated reads of 2026, which I'll also link, was so long, like that gap would have driven me actually insane. So I only had to wait a year in between discovering Natasha Bishop and getting the sequel to one of my favorite romances of all time. Prayers up for anyone who had to wait longer. So Only for the Week features Janelle, who is a doctor who wants to open up kind of like a maternity, Black women maternity health focused center, but kind of just feels held back in her life. And Rome, who is a part of like a friend group that she's a part of, where there's 4 girls and 4 guys, and you know how that happens in romance. There's going to be at least 4 books where they all get together. And she is going for 2 weeks on a sort of vacation to watch the wedding of her sister and hopefully be the maid of honor / a bridesmaid. Rome is like a game developer and kind of Mr. Moneybags, really. He got some serious money. But what really drew me in between these two was that Janelle's sister is marrying her ex-boyfriend. Messy, I know. And I'm just going to say it. Janelle's sister, Amari Cross, is a bitch. Like a straight up bitch. Not in the Megan Thee Stallion way. Just dusty, musty, crusty. And the way she operates with her sister, the dynamic Janelle's parents have set between her and her sister is all wrong, all bad. And I think a lot of Black women and women in general can relate to. And Rome steps in and is just literally the man of our dreams. Like, there are so many scenes in this book where I'm just like, God, like the men in Japan, how can I marry a fictional character? How can I marry this man? Rome, what a man you are. Men written by women will always be elite. Period. End of discussion. So that's all I can say on the story itself, because it starts messy, gets really deep, gets really spicy. I actually did tear up during some of the heated discussions between Janelle and her sister in the final climactic finish. And I just loved it. I absolutely ate this up. I'm so excited that the series is continuing, and I hope that you read the series in 2026, or again, whenever you're seeing this video. With that said, we are at the end of the video. I hope that you enjoy these recommendations for 2026 that I enjoyed in 2025. And if you have any recommendations, please put them down below. I love reading books. It is literally my personality. And with that said, that's it. Thank you, Royalty, for returning. If you're a returning subscriber, I love that you're back at this realm. If you are a citizen, a casual viewer, or a distinguished guest that's just kind of dropping by, I hope that you like and subscribe and join our royal ranks. And until next time, I hope that you read an amazing book. Well, see you then. Bye!